Hello everyone, my name is Benji and I am so excited to welcome you to Thinking Cap FPL. Whether you need a thinking cap to help you make your FPL decisions or whether you just need captaincy advice, I'll always have you covered. In today's video, I'm going to take a look at the newly released Premier League fixtures for the 2024-25 season from game weeks 1 to 10. I won't be touching on player drafts or chip strategies, it's way too early for that. Instead, I'll be ranking the top 4 teams to attack fixtures wise, as well as the top 4 teams to avoid for the first 10 game weeks. I'm also covering fixture rotation pairings with the aim of optimizing Arsenal and Brentford's tricky schedules. Now, obviously, this is a captaincy channel. Of course, I'll be providing an early preview on favorable fixtures for captaincy in the first 10. If you want to interact with me and stay up to date with all things FPL, make sure to follow these two X accounts, and as always, make sure to like and subscribe. Thinking Cap activated. Let's jump into it. So, you were probably wondering why I highlighted Arsenal and Brentford out of all teams in the introductory section. Well, that's because Arsenal played two newly promoted sides in the first 10 games. Both of these games will be played at the Emirates and are also back to back. Additionally, Brentford play 0 top 8 teams in their first 5 home games, which is kind of crazy to me. Included in those 5 are Ipswich Town, Southampton, and Wolves. And I also thought it would be important to highlight Newcastle versus Southampton on opening weekend, as to me, that definitely seems like the most tasty fixture on offer, apart from maybe Liverpool Ipswich. Newcastle are at home though, facing, in my opinion, the worst team in the Prem. For those of you who were excited to pick up Leif Davis in their initial drafts, you might just have to hold on that thought, as Ipswich Town do play Liverpool and Man City in their first 2 matches. And finally, the big game on opening weekend will be Chelsea-Manchester City, played at Stamford Bridge. Maresca is not going to have any settling time in, it seems, straight to business. But the more interesting thing to note about this is what landscape it creates for Game Week 1 captaincy, as Palmer and Haaland both likely to be captained less by the masses. But yeah, I just wanted to collect kind of my key takeaways from an initial look at the fixtures. If you want to have a look at all 380 games, I've attached a link to them in the video description. Let's move into teams with fixtures to attack and teams to avoid. My favorite 4 teams with great fixtures to attack from game weeks 1 to 5 are definitely Liverpool, Newcastle, Fulham, and Brighton. So let's start off with Liverpool. I do think their starting fixture run is really solid, apart from Man United away. And I mean, look, if you ask a Liverpool fan in recent years, they'd probably say that's not even a difficult fixture. But I still think, as a United fan myself, it's definitely not easy for them, especially being at Old Trafford. But Arne Slot has picked up Ipswich, newly promoted side as the first game, and 3 excellent home games as well in the first 5. It just can't really get better than that. I think it just makes Liverpool assets a really easy investment start of the season, but obviously this depends on player prices, depends on preseason performance, stuff like that. But definitely one to monitor, and I think they're top of most people's lists. Newcastle have, in my opinion, the best opening weekend fixture in Southampton. Visually, they don't have the most appealing set of starting fixtures, with Tottenham at home and Wolves away in game weeks 3 and 4. But despite this, I still think that Bournemouth away in game week 2 and Fulham away in game week 5 bode really well for Newcastle returns, defensive and attacking. I mean, if you cast your mind back to Newcastle Spurs at St. James's Park last season, Spurs got thrashed 4-0. Could the same thing happen? Yes, 100%. It's definitely possible. It's just the Southampton game, along with the decent away fixtures, is just a lot of upside for me, and I think Newcastle are a very smart investment game weeks 1 to 5. Now, the next team I'm sure will surprise some people. Fulham make the top 4 attack list from game week 1 to 5. They've got a really sneaky set of great starting fixtures. Now, opening weekend to Man United, definitely not amazing, but they play two promoted teams back to back in Leicester and Ipswich, followed by back to back home games. Just because of how good their fixtures are from game week 2 to 5, I'd really recommend keeping a close eye on Fulham assets in preseason. Let's just say, for argument's sake, that they're performing well and looking sharp. A Muniz pickup in game week 1 could be an excellent differential in the third forward spot. But just to play devil's advocate, I think if Fulham looks sloppy and uninterested, perhaps you could look at backing the promoted teams Leicester and Ipswich in game week 2 and 3. Just some food for thought. Now, Brighton. Brighton are the fourth and final team I'd recommend to attack. The Seagulls' opening three are very tough. Everton away, Man United at home, then it's a trip to the Emirates. I just can't get over Ipswich at home in game week 4 and Nottingham Forest in game week 5. Those fixtures, to me at least, look like gold, especially because they fall after three tough games, of which Brighton could potentially go 0 wins from 3, making those two games at home that more important. Considering Brighton have a new coach, I do think I'm factoring in some new manager bounce by putting them there as well. I will just say though, historically, Brighton have always been a team that starts the season well. There's been so many times where Brighton asset has smashed me early on in the season because I overlooked them. Now, Ipswich and Forest are definitely prime fixtures for returns, so I'll be keeping my eye on the likes of Joao Pedro and Kairo Mitoma in preseason for sure. Let's move on to my 4 teams to avoid. Now, Wolves is number 1, with Ipswich Town, Bournemouth, and West Ham following. Let's begin with Wolves. Look, in my opinion, I think Wolves, they've got the toughest opening fixture schedule. Their first 3 away games are Arsenal, Nottingham Forest, and Villa, with Chelsea at home and Newcastle at home in game weeks 2 and 4. That run is just really, really tough, and I would not be going anywhere near Wolves' assets at the start of next season. No way. Ipswich, they've got a tough start to the season too. Game week 1 and 2, they've got Liverpool and Man City. I don't think Davis is a viable option for fantasy at the start. I mean, you could look at him Fulham at home in game week 3, which is not a bad fixture, but it's a trip to Brighton in game week 4. And, we already spoke about how Brighton's first 3 were tough, right? So if they walk away with 0 from 3 in terms of wins, they're going to be really hungry to win that game against Ipswich. 100%. And it's also at the Amex Stadium, right? And the thing with Ipswich is, I know they've got Fulham, but I just overall as a package, I don't rate their starting fixtures. Southampton away looks nice on paper, but you never really know which promoted team is the one to back, and I think that's just a dangerous thought. It's dangerous to put your eggs into the Ipswich basket without actually seeing them. So for now, I have them as avoid from game weeks 1 to 5. Now, looking at Bournemouth, they've got a decent fixture on the opening weekend against Forest, but it's followed up by Newcastle at home, Everton away, then Chelsea at home, then Liverpool away. I mean, if you really want to invest in a Solanke early on, maybe you can do it in game week 1, but I wouldn't unless Iraola's side has some kind of super preseason and look extremely in form. Otherwise, I wouldn't be there. And plus, I will say, Iraola has a track record of his team starting the season slower performance-wise, then closer to the middle of the season they start to tick up and pick up more form. I'd wait for their fixtures to turn before investing for sure. The final team to avoid for the first 5 game weeks would definitely be West Ham. Hosting Villa on opening weekend will be very interesting for sure, and I mean, that might just be my game of the weekend. I think that game's going to be really good. But, Palace away in game week 2 is no easy feat with Glasner ball in full flow. They then head to City, which we don't need to talk about. Fulham away is okay, but it's just the crap that it's surrounded with. I wouldn't be investing there at all, so sorry people who are looking at Bowen and Kudus. I just think for the first 5, they're definitely non-options. And Chelsea at home in game week 5 as well is also not an easy fixture. Yeah, it's going to be a tough start to the season for Lopetegui, for sure. Hard avoid for the first five. From game week 6 to 10, my favorite teams with fixtures to attack are definitely Man City, Everton, Brentford, and Arsenal. It would be criminal to not recommend attacking Man City's fixtures, even if they played Arsenal and Man United every week. I mean, they are genuinely fixture proof. They're the best team in the country. And you look at game week 6 and you think, okay, Newcastle away isn't an ideal fixture at all. And there's more on how this will affect the captaincy landscape later. However, just put that fixture of Newcastle in with Fulham at home in game week 7, Southampton at home in game week 9. It's just too good to ignore. Even Wolves away in game week 8, Bournemouth in game week 10. It's just a great run for a Pep team. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Haaland put 6 to 8 goals in from game week 7 to 10. Definitely attack those City game weeks. My next team to attack from game week 6 to 10 is Everton. They have back-to-back home matches in game week 6 and 7 where they host Palace and Newcastle. Not ideal fixtures, but the run after that is good, as they face two promoted sides away from home, Ipswich and Southampton. Fulham at home in there in game week 9 is solid. You know, Tarkowski, Pickford, maybe even a DCL could all be on the menu at this time, so keep your eye on Everton in preseason. Brentford enter the top 4 teams to attack from game week 6 to 10 with their 3 peachy home fixtures. West Ham, Wolves, and Ipswich all at home is a very attractive prospect. As long as you can rotate Brentford assets to the bench in game week 8, I think you'll find there to be an excellent value in Brentford. Fulham away in game week 10 is a decent fixture too. It'll be really important to monitor Thomas Frank's side in preseason. And look, despite a tough opening 10 game weeks, I still think Arsenal are a team to attack fixtures-wise from game week 6 to 10. They play Leicester at home in game week 6 and Southampton at home in game week 7. 2 games which just scream Arsenal returns, both attacking and defending. Bournemouth in game week 8 is great. However, after that it gets a little bit stickier with Liverpool at home. And then it's a trip to St. James's Park in game week 10. And look, I've just got to talk about Arsenal last season. I mean, they started the season very poorly, and they kind of picked up form as the season went on. They can't afford to do that next season. With big games coming really early in their fixture schedule, I mean, Tottenham away game week 4, Man City away game week 5, it just really tells you Arsenal need to be firing on all cylinders from the get-go. I also think rotation pairings will be key to optimizing Arsenal's tricky starting fixtures, and I've got a little piece on this later in the video, so keep your eye out for that. But yeah, overall, I just think the 2 promoted home games back-to-back were just too good for Arsenal, and they had to be included in this list. Moving swiftly on to the 4 teams to avoid from game week 6 to 10, I've got Newcastle, Man United, Bournemouth, and Wolves. Wolves remain in the avoid section for game weeks 6 to 10, which just speaks volumes about how poor their opening fixtures are. Liverpool at home in game week 6, followed by Brentford away game week 7, then they host Man City in game week 8. I don't really see where any Wolves points will come in the opening fixtures, and I don't see where Wolves attacking or defensive returns will come. I would definitely be avoiding them in the first 10 games. Unfortunately, and it hurts my heart to put them here, I have to say that my own team, Manchester United, is definitely a void from game week 6 to 10. We've got Tottenham, Chelsea, Brentford as our home fixtures in this patch, all of which have been really difficult games for us in the past. I mean, even Villa away in game week 7 isn't amazing. So I don't see many returns for the United boys here unless we have an incredible transfer window in preseason, which when do we ever have that? Not really that often. West Ham away seems to be the best fixture in the lot, but we did lose that fixture last season, so I would stay away from the United boys in this period. Moving on to Bournemouth, I think Bournemouth are a hard avoid from game week 8 to 10, where they play Arsenal, Villa, and Man City. But I suppose you could opt for a Solanke in game week 6 and 7. Two fixtures against promoted sides around some really tough games means that Bournemouth might really need to pick up points in those two. I think there's better investments elsewhere, honestly. Just looking at the fixtures on paper. Straight up avoid. And finally, Newcastle. They've got Man City at home in game week 6. Then they visit Everton at Goodison Park after that. Brighton at home in game week 8 is actually a really good fixture. But Chelsea away and Arsenal at home after that, it's just puts me off Newcastle asset investment from game week 6 to 10. Now that we've finished taking a look at teams to attack and avoid in the first 10 game weeks, let's move on to my rotation pairing section. So, starting with Brentford for the rotation pairings, I've been highlighting throughout this video about how strong Brentford's home fixtures are to start the season. So, I thought it would be good to find a team which rotates really well with them, one of which is actually Newcastle. Both teams have good starting fixtures in game week 1, then Brentford hit Liverpool away in game week 2. Newcastle rotates nicely in game week 2 with Bournemouth away. You'd then play a Brentford asset against Southampton at home, whilst being able to bench your Newcastle player for Spurs at home. The key to this rotation pairing is actually in game week 4 and 5 when Brentford hit Man City away and Spurs away. Newcastle rotation sweeps in nicely, allowing you to get two decent fixtures in Wolves away and Fulham away. Now, you're in game week 6 and 7, you're getting Brentford's money fixtures, back-to-back home games against West Ham and Wolves. Then in game week 8, you're able to bench your Brentford asset against Man United away for a Newcastle player facing Brighton at home, which is a really solid fixture. I think there's a lot of goals in that game. So when Newcastle have Chelsea away in game week 9, Brentford have Ipswich at home in game week 9, and that's one of the best fixtures in this rotation. The final game week is probably the most suboptimal fixture rotation out of all 10 games. However, I do think most people would have hopped off Brentford after the Ipswich fixture anyways. Moving on to Arsenal, we all know about the incredible Arsenal defense last season, especially in FPL. Therefore, it's definitely key to get a head start on optimizing their fixture run because, let's be real, it is quite tipsy-turvy. The best team that rotates well with them is Brighton. In game week 1, you'd play the Arsenal asset against Wolves at home. Game week 2 is more of a coin toss decision, but after that it gets good. You'd play the Arsenal player versus Brighton at home when the two teams play against each other. Then after that, Brighton hit Ipswich at home and Forest at home in game weeks 4 and 5. Now, Arsenal's toughest fixtures are in game weeks 4 and 5, where they have Tottenham and Man City, both games away from home. So that's a really perfect rotation. Game week 6, your Brighton asset turns into a bad patch. Chelsea away, Tottenham at home, Newcastle away. This is when Arsenal have arguably their best fixtures in the first 10 games. A peachy run, very peachy, of Leicester at home, Southampton at home, and Bournemouth away. I mean, I've never seen such a guaranteed 9 points in my life. So I think it rotates really well up to that period. Then in game week 9, you'd play the Brighton asset versus Wolves at home when Arsenal plays Liverpool. And in game week 10, there's another coin toss flip, but I'd probably just back Arsenal versus Newcastle at the Emirates. I mean, they won 4-1 last season, and they almost kept the clean sheet too. So as you can see from this, you're really able to maximize Arsenal and Brighton's best fixtures while avoiding their toughest matches. I mean, I think it's a really strong rotation pairing, and it'll definitely be key, as I said before, for those already thinking about investing in Gunners assets. Finally, let's move on to the best part of the video, breaking down captaincy. Finally, we've moved on to the best section of the video, which is the captaincy breakdown. Now, Thinking Cap FPL is all about captaincy. We believe that choosing your captain every week, no matter what fantasy format you play, is the most important decision. So I think it's really valuable to get an early sneak peek on what the FPL landscape will look like in the first 10 game weeks for captaincy. So let's have a look at Erling Haaland first. I think there's 5 weeks where Haaland stands out as the clear favorite. This would be game week 2, game week 7, game week 8, game week 9, and potentially game week 3 and 4. Now, I think it's really viable to go against Haaland in game week 1 as he's playing Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. I think you need to monitor his form though in preseason, as he did score 16 points in the same fixture last season. On opening weekend, Isak and Newcastle assets are currently my favorite captaincy options, as I do see Southampton as the weakest team in the Prem. As well, Newcastle are very strong at home. I think opening weekend captain will depend heavily on player and team form in the preseason. I wouldn't be surprised to see Salah versus Ipswich away, backed by the majority of engaged managers if he's banging goals in preseason. Bukayo Saka is a great alternative too for game week 1 as he plays Wolves at the Emirates. Now, let's touch on Liverpool and Salah. They've got some excellent home fixtures in the first 10, which is why Salah is current top option in game weeks 4 and 5. The Reds play Nottingham Forest and Bournemouth at home in those weeks. And as well, in game week 10, when Salah has Brighton at home, Haaland has Bournemouth away. Right, so we're already starting to compare Salah Haaland fixtures, and I think nailing that specific decision, Salah versus Haaland captaincy, in some of the first 10 game weeks will be key to success. Now, Spurs is an interesting topic, as well as Son Heung-min, because he doesn't really have many clear-cut fixtures where you think, you know what, I can captain Sonny here. I do believe game week 10 is probably your best bet, Aston Villa at home, but even then, Salah and Haaland have good fixtures, so are you really going to go there? Probably not. Everton at home in game week 2 is okay, but then again, you're not going to captain Son then because Haaland has Ipswich at home. So the real interesting point about this is that Son, you probably won't captain him in any of the first 10 game weeks. Is he really a necessity in your team? Now, depending on price, factors, etc., like that, he could be an option, could not be an option. You'll have to see when the game comes out. But it's interesting to note that Son's fixtures do not particularly stand out in the first 10, which creates an interesting narrative whether you have Son or you go without Son. Now, I just wanted to touch on Manchester United because hopefully I have some Man United guys watching this. Southampton away in game week 4 is the only fixture where I think you could captain a Man United player. I would be looking at Bruno. If Rashford's in form in preseason, then perhaps. But Fernandes looks to be a nice option if Haaland and Salah are slow to hit form, which I doubt will be the case. Watkins also offers an interesting captaincy landscape because he's got Leicester away in game week 3. Really good fixture for him to smash it. Similar to Brighton away last season early on where he got something crazy like 23 points. And Ollie also looks to be proper potential captain material in game weeks 5 versus Wolves at home and in game week 6 versus Ipswich away. So depending on Watkins' price point, I think you'd have to consider him for some point in the first 10 just because those fixtures are too good to be true. Now, Chelsea's Cole Palmer is a really interesting talking point. He comes into the captaincy picture in game week 3 with Palace at home. It's a really good fixture. If you don't own Watkins, he looks to be a really good option with Haaland having West Ham away. I do think, by the way, in game week 3, Mbumo offers an excellent option. Brentford assets in general, I'm not sure whether their new striker will be on penalties, but you definitely want to captain the penalty taker against Southampton for sure. So, and I just did want to touch on Jamie Vardy and Leicester. Look, depending on how he performs at the start of the season, there is big justification to own Jamie Vardy. Especially from game week 8 to 10, where he plays Southampton away, Forest at home, then Ipswich Town. It's really good to have another captaincy option in your boat, even if he's just there to get you points. You're not going to captain him, right? but the fact that I'm putting him in the captaincy breakdown just means and just shows you how much I value those fixtures. Just the fixtures on paper. I'm not talking about age of the player, quality of the player, price points, or anything, just purely on the fixtures. So to recap, I expect Haaland and Salah will dominate Game Week 1 to 10 captaincy as things stands. However, depending on player form, player pricing, team performances, this will be subject to change. There's excellent value in Bukayo Saka, Watkins, and Palmer, as well as a few other alternatives. The key thing too with Heung-min Son is that you're probably not going to captain him in the first 10 game weeks, which creates that interesting narrative I was discussing earlier. And that concludes the fixture breakdowns game weeks 1 to 10. Thank you so much for watching. I know the video may have some little quirks here and there that need to be improved, but it's just started. It should be a lot better by the start of the season, and I'm just trying to get into the flow. But thank you guys so much for watching. Please leave a comment, like, subscribe, and I'll see you for the next one. Thinking Cap deactivated.